bear cub was locked in an abandoned freezer at a junkyard. What this baby did was shocking. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. The rusted metal screeched against concrete as little Mila Thompson crawled across the junkyard floor. Her tiny fingers grabbed onto broken glass pieces that sparkled in the weak morning sun. Nobody noticed the 18-month-old baby had escaped from her mother's trailer again. The air smelled like motor oil and something else. Something dead. Mila's mother worked nights at the diner down the highway. She trusted old Mr. Rodriguez to watch Mila during the day, but the man spent most of his time sorting through car parts, forgetting about the curious toddler. The trailer door hung loose on its hinges. That's how Mila always got out. A sound came from deep inside the junkyard. It wasn't the usual creaking of metal or the wind whistling through broken windows. This sound was different. It was alive. Mila stopped crawling. Her blue eyes widened as she listened. The sound came again. Softer this time. Like crying. 10 minutes earlier, 3 teenagers had been throwing beer cans at an old television set. Connor Adams kicked a washing machine door, laughing when it fell off. His friends joined him, their voices echoing through the maze of abandoned appliances. "Check this out." Connor pointed at something moving near the dumpsters. A small brown shape sniffed around the garbage bags. "It's a bear cub." The cub couldn't have been more than 4 months old. Its mother was nowhere in sight. The creature pawed at a McDonald's bag, trying to reach the leftover fries inside. It didn't notice the teenagers approaching from behind. "We should get out of here," one of Connor's friends said. "What if its mother comes back?" Connor picked up a metal pipe. "Relax, it's just a baby." The cub turned its head. Its dark eyes met Connor's. For a moment, neither moved. Then Connor swung the pipe against a nearby refrigerator. The loud bang made the cub jump. It tried to run, but the teenagers had surrounded it. "Open that freezer," Connor ordered, pointing at an old white appliance lying on its back. The door hung open, revealing the dark interior. Dead leaves and spider webs filled the corners. The freezer had been there for years. Nobody remembered who dumped it. The inside still smelled like rotten meat from decades ago. The rubber seal around the door had hardened and cracked, but the latch still worked. Connor's friends hesitated. Something felt wrong about this. The cub backed against a pile of tires, making small whimpering sounds. Its tiny claws scraped against the rubber as it tried to climb away. "Come on." Connor grabbed the cub by its scruff. The animal squealed and twisted, but Connor was bigger and stronger. He dragged it toward the freezer. "It'll be funny. We'll let it out in a minute." The cub fought harder as they got closer to the dark opening. Its back legs kicked wildly. One claw caught Connor's jacket, tearing the fabric. This made him angry. He shoved the cub into the freezer with both hands. The door slammed shut. The latch clicked into place. Inside, the cub's cries became muffled. Its small body hit the walls as it tried to escape. The teenagers laughed, but their laughter sounded nervous now. One of them checked his phone. "We should go. My mom's expecting me." "Yeah," Connor agreed, already walking away. "The thing will figure out how to open it." But the latch was on the outside, and the cub's paws were too small to reach through the cracks. The teenagers disappeared behind a stack of crushed cars, their voices fading into the distance. That's when Mila heard the sound. The crying from inside the metal box. She crawled faster now, her knees scraping against sharp edges. Blood appeared on her pale skin, but she didn't cry. The sound from the box pulled her forward like a magnet. The freezer lay 20 feet away. To Mila, it looked like a white mountain. She could hear scratching now, desperate scratching, and breathing. Heavy, panicked breathing that matched her own quickening heartbeat. Mila reached the freezer. She pressed her ear against the cold metal. The crying was louder here. She could feel vibrations through the surface. Something was trapped inside. Something that needed help. Her tiny hands patted the freezer door. She found the handle but couldn't turn it. The mechanism was too stiff, too complicated for baby fingers. Mila made a sound. Not quite a word, but close. "Baba," she said, which meant help in her limited vocabulary. The scratching inside stopped. Then it started again, more frantically. The cub had heard her. It knew someone was outside. Mila tried the handle again, her face turned red with effort. She pulled with both hands, her feet slipping on the wet ground. The freezer rocked slightly but didn't open. Tears formed in her eyes, not from pain, but from frustration. The cub's cries were getting weaker. The air inside the freezer was running out. The small space that once stored frozen food now held a dying animal. Its breathing came in short gasps. Its paws stopped scratching. Mila sensed the change. She knew, in the way children know things without understanding why, that time was running out. She looked around the junkyard. Mr. Rodriguez was nowhere to be seen. Her mother was still asleep in the trailer. There was nobody to help, except herself. The baby stood up on shaky legs. She had only been walking for a few months. Her balance wasn't perfect, but determination made her stronger. She grabbed the freezer handle with both hands and pulled backward, using her entire body weight. The freezer door moved an inch. Just an inch, but it was enough for fresh air to slip inside. The cub gasped, its lungs filled with oxygen. New energy surged through its small body. It pushed against the door from inside while Mila pulled from outside. The gap widened. 2 inches, 3 inches. A brown paw appeared in the opening, then a nose. The cub's face emerged, eyes blinking in the sudden light. It tumbled out onto the ground, breathing heavily. Mila fell backward from the effort. She landed hard on her bottom but didn't cry. Her eyes were fixed on the creature in front of her. The cub was smaller than she expected. Its fur was matted with sweat. Its body shook from the ordeal. For a long moment, baby and bear cub stared at each other. 2 young creatures, both far from their mothers, both vulnerable in this harsh place. Mila reached out her hand slowly, the way she did with the stray cats that sometimes visited the trailer. The cub sniffed her fingers. Its wet nose tickled her palm. Then it did something unexpected. It licked her hand, just once. A gentle thank you from one baby to another. A deep growl rumbled across the junkyard. Mila froze. Her hand still touched the cub's wet fur. The growl came again, closer this time. From behind a stack of crushed cars, a massive shape emerged. The mother bear stood 8 feet tall on her hind legs. Her eyes burned with rage. Dried blood stained her left shoulder where a hunter's bullet had grazed her that morning. That's why she had left her cub hidden while she searched for food. Now she had returned to find her baby with a human child. The cub made a small sound. Not a cry of fear, but something softer. It pressed closer to Mila, as if protecting her. The mother bear's nostrils flared. She smelled her cub's fear sweat. She smelled the stale air from inside the freezer. She understood what had happened here. Mila's blue eyes met the bear's dark ones. The child didn't scream. She didn't run. Her tiny hand continued to stroke the cub's fur. In her innocent mind, this was just another animal that needed comfort. Like the stray dogs she fed scraps to. Like the injured bird she once found in the garden. The mother bear took a step forward. The ground trembled under her weight. Broken glass crunched beneath her paws. She could cover the distance to her cub in 2 strides. One swipe of her claws could end the human child's life. But she hesitated. Something about the scene made her pause. The way her cub leaned into the child's touch. The way the baby's face showed no fear, only curiosity. The mother bear had lived near humans long enough to recognize cruelty. She had seen hunters shoot at her for sport. She had watched teenagers throw rocks at her den. But this was different. The cub turned its head toward its mother and made a series of small sounds, almost like it was explaining. Its paw touched Mila's knee. The gesture was clear. This small human had helped. This small human was good. Mila giggled. The cub's paw tickled her skin. She grabbed it with both hands and shook it up and down, the way she had seen adults shake hands. The cub tilted its head, confused but not frightened. It had never played with a human before. The mother bear lowered herself to all fours. Her posture became less threatening. She sniffed the air again, catching new scents. Oil, rust, and something else. Danger. Connor Adams hadn't gone far. He and his friends had stopped at the edge of the junkyard to smoke cigarettes. They heard the growl and came back to investigate. Now they stood frozen behind an overturned truck, watching the scene unfold. "Is that the cub's mother?" one whispered. "We need to get out of here," another said. But Connor's ego was bruised. He had meant to play a harmless prank. Now a baby had shown him up. He picked up a rock and threw it at the bears. It missed, clanging against a metal drum. The sound echoed through the junkyard like a gunshot. The mother bear's head snapped toward the noise. Her lips pulled back, revealing yellow teeth. She recognized the scent. These were the ones who had hurt her cub. These were the ones who had trapped it in that metal box. Her protective instincts flared. But before she could charge, Mila did something extraordinary. The toddler stood up, wobbling on unsteady legs. She stepped in front of the cub, spreading her arms wide. Her small body barely reached the mother bear's knee, but her intention was clear. She was protecting her new friend. The mother bear stopped. In 40 years of life, she had never seen anything like this. A human child defending a bear cub. The absurdity of it, the beauty of it. Her anger began to fade, replaced by something else. Wonder, perhaps. Or respect. Connor threw another rock. This one hit the ground near Mila's feet. The baby stumbled but didn't fall. She made an angry sound, the kind she made when someone took her toys. She bent down, picked up a pebble with her chubby fingers and threw it back. It traveled about 3 feet before dropping harmlessly to the ground. The cub stood up beside her. It was learning from its small human friend. It growled, or tried to. The sound came out more like a squeeze toy than a threat, but it stood its ground, shoulder to shoulder with Mila. The mother bear watched her cub display courage it had never shown before. This human child was teaching it to be brave. In that moment, something shifted in the massive animal's heart. The line between human and animal blurred. They were just 2 mothers and 2 babies, trying to survive in a harsh world. Connor started forward, but his friends held him back. "Are you crazy? That's a grizzly bear." "She's protecting the kid," one observed. "Look at her." Indeed, the mother bear had positioned herself between the teenagers and the 2 babies. Her stance was protective, not aggressive. She was giving them a chance to leave, a chance Connor's friends were smart enough to take. They dragged him away, his protests fading into the distance. The junkyard grew quiet again. Only the sound of dripping water and distant traffic remained. The mother bear turned back to her cub and the human child. Mila had sat down again, exhausted from her brave display. The cub curled up beside her, its head resting on her lap. The mother bear approached slowly. Each step was careful, deliberate. She lowered her massive head toward Mila. The child reached up and touched the bear's nose. It was wet and cold, like a dog's. The bear's breath was warm on her face. It smelled like pine trees and earth. Then the mother bear did something that would have made wildlife experts gasp. She lay down beside the two babies. Her huge body curved around them like a protective wall. The cub crawled onto its mother's side, but kept one paw touching Mila. The connection between them was unbreakable now. Mila yawned. The excitement had tired her out. She leaned against the mother bear's warm fur. It was softer than she expected, like the blanket her mother wrapped her in at night. Her eyes began to close. That's when Mr. Rodriguez finally noticed the baby was missing. The old man had been elbow-deep in an engine block, lost in his work. He wiped his greasy hands on his overalls and called out, "Mila, where are you, little one?" He searched around the trailer first, then wider. His worry grew with each empty corner. The junkyard was dangerous for a toddler. Sharp edges everywhere, toxic chemicals, and sometimes wild animals. "Mila," his voice cracked with panic. He grabbed a crowbar, just in case, and headed deeper into the maze of junk. His arthritis made walking painful, but fear drove him forward. If anything happened to that baby, he'd never forgive himself. The sound of human voices woke the mother bear. She lifted her head, instantly alert, but it was different from before. This voice held worry, not threat. She recognized the tone. It was the same sound she made when searching for her lost cub. Mila stirred at the sound of her name. "Papa," she called out, using the name she had given Mr. Rodriguez. The old man wasn't her grandfather, but he was the closest thing she had. "Mila, where are you?" The voice was getting closer. The mother bear faced a choice. She could take her cub and disappear into the forest. It would be the safe option, the smart option. But something held her back. Perhaps it was the way Mila's small hand still rested on her cub's back. Perhaps it was the memory of those brave little arms spread wide in defense. Or perhaps it was simply Mother's intuition, recognizing that this child needed protection too. Mr. Rodriguez rounded a corner and stopped dead. His crowbar clattered to the ground. Before him lay a scene that defied all logic. A massive grizzly bear curled around two babies, one human, one bear. And strangest of all, the bear was looking at him not with aggression, but with something almost like understanding. "Mila," he whispered. "Don't move, baby." But Mila was already moving. She stood up, wobbling slightly, and toddled toward him. "Papa, bear." She pointed back at her new friends, her face bright with excitement. The old man's legs shook. 40 years working in this junkyard, and he'd never seen anything like this. The mother bear watched him carefully but made no move to stop Mila. The cub whined softly, missing its playmate already. "Nice bear," Mr. Rodriguez said slowly. His voice trembled. "Good bear, I'm just going to take the baby now, okay?" The mother bear tilted her massive head. Then, in a gesture that would haunt the old man's dreams for years to come, she nodded. Just once. A clear, deliberate nod. Mila reached Mr. Rodriguez and grabbed his weathered hand. "Bear friend," she announced proudly. "Baby bear stuck, Mila help." The pieces clicked together in the old man's mind. The abandoned freezer, the cub's matted fur, Mila's stubborn determination. "You saved the cub?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. Mila nodded enthusiastically. Then she turned and waved at the bears. "Bye-bye." The cub stood up and took a tentative step forward. Its mother placed a gentle paw on its back, holding it in place, but she allowed it to call out once, a sound that might have been goodbye or thank you or friend. Mr. Rodriguez picked up Mila and backed away slowly. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but he forced himself to move calmly. The mother bear watched them go. When they reached the edge of the clearing, she stood up. With infinite grace for such a large creature, she nudged her cub toward the forest. They disappeared into the trees like shadows. But the story didn't end there. That night, as Mr. Rodriguez tucked Mila into her crib, he noticed something outside the trailer window. 2 sets of eyes glowing in the darkness. The bears had returned. Not to threaten, but to check. To make sure the small human who had saved a life was safe. This became a pattern. Every few nights the bears would appear at the edge of the junkyard. Sometimes Mr. Rodriguez would leave food out. Honey for the mother, peanut butter for the cub. He never told anyone. Who would believe him? Mila would press her face against the window and wave. The cub would stand on its hind legs and paw at the air. 2 babies, separated by species, but connected by something deeper. Something that transcended the boundaries humans had created between wild and tame. 3 weeks passed. Mila's mother, Jessica Brooks, remained unaware of the nightly visitors. She worked double shifts at the diner, coming home exhausted and falling into bed without looking out the window. Mr. Rodriguez kept the secret, partly because he feared Jessica would panic, and partly because he had grown to cherish these magical moments himself. The morning of the incident started like any other. October rain drummed against the trailer roof. Mila ate her oatmeal messily, more of it ending up on her face than in her mouth. Mr. Rodriguez sipped his coffee and watched the news on a tiny television that flickered with static. "Breaking news," the anchor announced. "State wildlife officials are tracking a wounded grizzly bear spotted near Riverside Junkyard. The animal is considered dangerous and residents are advised to stay indoors." Mr. Rodriguez's blood ran cold. He knew exactly which bear they meant. The mother bear's shoulder wound had gotten worse. He'd noticed her limping during the last visit. The bullet that grazed her was probably infected. In the wild, such wounds often meant death. The phone rang. Jessica's panicked voice filled the trailer. "Mr. Rodriguez, I just heard about the bear on the radio. Lock the doors. Don't let Mila outside. I'm trying to leave work, but my boss won't let me go until the lunch rush ends." "Don't worry," the old man lied. "We're safe inside." But Mila had other plans. She had learned to open the trailer door by standing on her toy box. While Mr. Rodriguez was distracted by the phone, she slipped outside. The rain had stopped, leaving puddles that reflected the gray sky. She splashed through them happily, heading for her favorite spot in the junkyard. The mother bear was already there. But something was wrong. She lay on her side near the abandoned freezer, breathing heavily. Dark blood seeped from her shoulder into the wet ground. The cub paced around her, whimpering. It had tried to wake her several times, but she barely responded. Mila found them like this. Her happy babbling stopped. Even at 18 months, she understood that her friend was hurt. She toddled closer, ignoring the cub's warning growl. The small bear was scared, protective of its dying mother. "Boo-boo," Mila said, pointing at the wound. It was the word she used when she scraped her knee. She knew boo-boos needed bandages. They needed kissing to make them better. Without fear, she approached the massive bear. The mother bear's eyes opened slightly. They were glazed with pain and fever. She recognized the human child but couldn't lift her head. Her strength was fading. In the wild, she would have found a quiet place to die alone. But some instinct had brought her here, to the place where her cub had been saved. Mila touched the bear's good shoulder. The fur was wet from rain and sweat. "Mama Bear's sick," she announced to the cub. The young bear had stopped growling. It understood, in its simple way, that this tiny human was trying to help. That's when Mr. Rodriguez realized Mila was missing again. He burst out of the trailer, his arthritis forgotten in his panic. He ran through the junkyard, calling her name. His voice echoed off the metal walls. "Mila, where are you?" He found them in the clearing. His heart nearly stopped. Mila sat beside the dying bear, her small hands pressed against the wounded shoulder as if she could heal it through touch alone. The cub sat on the other side, mirroring her posture. "Mila, come here," he whispered urgently. "Come to Papa." But Mila shook her head stubbornly. "Help Mama Bear." Mr. Rodriguez heard engines in the distance. The wildlife officers were coming. They would have tranquilizer guns, or worse, real guns. A wounded grizzly was usually killed, not rescued. There wasn't time to think. "Okay," he said, making a decision that would change everything. "We'll help Mama Bear." He ran back to his tool shed. His hands shook as he grabbed supplies. First aid kit. Antibiotics meant for his own bad tooth. Clean rags. A bottle of hydrogen peroxide. He had no veterinary training, but he'd patched up enough stray dogs to know the basics. When he returned, more people had arrived. Not wildlife officers, but the teenagers. Connor Adams and his friends had been hanging around the junkyard entrance when they heard the commotion. Guilt had been eating at Connor since the freezer incident. He'd had nightmares about the trapped cub. "What are you doing, old man?" Connor asked, seeing the medical supplies. "What's right?" Mr. Rodriguez answered. "You can help or you can leave." The teenagers looked at each other, then at Mila, still holding the bear's paw. The cub had curled up against its mother's belly, seeking warmth from her fading body heat. "Tell us what to do," Connor said quietly. What followed was unlike anything the junkyard had ever witnessed. Teenagers who had never shown responsibility for anything worked together to save a life. Connor held the bear's massive head while Mr. Rodriguez cleaned the wound. His friends formed a barrier with their bodies, blocking the view from the main road. The bear barely moved. Perhaps she was too weak, or perhaps she understood. Mila never left her side, her small voice providing constant comfort. "Good bear, brave bear, all better soon." The wound was worse than Mr. Rodriguez feared. The bullet was still lodged in the muscle. Infection had spread, creating an abscess that needed draining. He worked with trembling hands, aware that one wrong move could cause the bear to lash out in pain. "Someone needs to distract the officers," Connor said. "They're getting closer." One of his friends nodded. "I'll say, I saw the bear heading toward the forest. Lead them the wrong way." "That's lying to the police," Connor warned. "That's saving a life," the friend corrected. As the teenager ran off to misdirect the search, Mr. Rodriguez made a crucial discovery. The bullet wasn't deep. With the right tools, he could extract it, but he needed steadier hands than his own. "Connor," he said, "you did this. You trapped her cub. Now you can help fix it." The teenager paled. "I don't know how. I'll guide you, but you have hands that don't shake. You can do this." Connor knelt beside the bear. Up close, she was even more magnificent. Her eyes, when they briefly focused on him, held no anger, only pain and a mother's worry for her cub. Under Mr. Rodriguez's instruction, Connor worked to remove the bullet. His friends held flashlights, turning the gray morning into operating room brightness. Mila sang softly, a nonsense song she'd made up about bears and babies. The cub watched everything with dark, intelligent eyes. The bullet came free with a wet sound. Fresh blood flowed, but Mr. Rodriguez was ready with pressure bandages. The antibiotics went in next, injected into the muscle. It wasn't professional veterinary care, but it was a chance. "Now we wait," the old man said. They formed a protective circle around the bears. Connor's friend had successfully led the wildlife officers on a wild goose chase through the forest. But they would return. Time was running out. The mother bear's breathing seemed less labored. The bleeding had stopped. She managed to lift her head and look at her cub, then at Mila, then at each human who had helped. Her eyes lingered on Connor. "I'm sorry," the teenager whispered. "I'm so sorry." The bear blinked slowly. In that blink was forgiveness, or something close to it. A new sound filled the air. Helicopters. The search had expanded. Soon the junkyard would be swarming with officials. The bears needed to leave, but the mother was still too weak to walk far. "The old delivery truck," Mr. Rodriguez said suddenly. "It still runs, barely." Connor understood immediately. "You want to drive her to safety? Unless you have a better idea." They worked together to create a makeshift stretcher from a tarp and metal poles. The hardest part was convincing the bears to trust them. Mila proved crucial here. She climbed into the truck bed first, patting the metal floor invitingly. "Come on, bear." "Truck ride fun." The cub followed her, unwilling to leave its human friend. Seeing her baby climb aboard gave the mother bear strength. With tremendous effort and help from the humans, she dragged herself onto the stretcher. Connor and his friends lifted her into the truck. Mr. Rodriguez started the engine. It coughed and sputtered but caught. Jessica's car appeared at the junkyard entrance just as they were pulling away. She had finally escaped work. Her scream of horror at seeing Mila in a truck with bears was lost in the engine noise. "Where are we going?" Connor asked, riding in the back with the bears and Mila. "I know a place," Mr. Rodriguez called back. "Old ranger station, abandoned but still has water, far enough from civilization." The drive took 20 minutes on back roads. 20 minutes of Mila happily babbling to the bears, of Connor keeping pressure on the wound, of teenagers who had found unexpected courage. They reached the station just as helicopters appeared over the junkyard. The ranger station sat in a clearing surrounded by pine trees. A stream gurgled nearby. It was perfect, safe, hidden. With Mr. Rodriguez's help, they settled the mother bear inside the shelter. Her breathing was stronger now. The antibiotics were working. "We need to go," Mr. Rodriguez said sadly. "Your mother will be worried sick, Mila." Mila's face crumpled. She hugged the cub fiercely. The young bear nuzzled her hair, memorizing her scent. Even it seemed to understand this was goodbye. "We'll come check on them," Connor promised. "Make sure they're okay." The mother bear lifted her head one last time. She looked at each human who had saved her. Then she did something none of them would ever forget. She extended one massive paw toward Mila. The toddler placed her tiny hand on the rough pad. For a moment, they stayed like that. Two mothers in a way. One who had saved a cub, one whose own cub had brought humans and bears together. Then it was over. They climbed back in the truck, leaving the bears to recover in peace. The drive back was silent, except for Mila's sniffles. At the junkyard, Jessica was waiting. Her face was a storm of emotions: relief, anger, confusion. "Mila!" She scooped up her daughter, holding her tight. "What were you thinking, Mr. Rodriguez? Bears? My baby with bears?" The old man started to explain, but Connor stepped forward. "It was my fault, ma'am, all of it. I trapped the cub. These bears, they wouldn't have been here if not for me. Mr. Rodriguez and Mila, they just showed me how to make it right." Jessica looked between them, trying to process this impossible story. Mila reached up and patted her mother's face. "Mama Bear had boo-boo. We fix it." Over the following days, the search for the wounded grizzly continued, but no one looked at the abandoned ranger station. No one suspected that a group of unlikely heroes had performed a rescue. The bears recovered slowly. Connor and his friends visited secretly, bringing food and checking the wound. Each time they went, Mila begged to go too, but Jessica, once she understood the full story, was torn between pride in her daughter's compassion and terror at what could have happened. She compromised by letting Mila draw pictures for the bears. Crayon masterpieces of bears and babies playing together. 2 months later, on a cold December morning, something amazing happened. Jessica was warming up the car for her early shift when she saw them. The mother bear and cub stood at the edge of the junkyard. The mother's wound had healed, leaving only a scar. They looked healthy, strong. Jessica held her breath as the bears approached the trailer. Mila was still asleep inside. The mother bear rose on her hind legs and placed something on the doorstep. Then they turned and walked back into the forest. When Jessica checked, she found a honeycomb. Fresh and golden. A gift. A thank you. A promise that the bond between their families would never truly break. She woke Mila to show her. The toddler's face lit up with joy. Bear friends remember. And they did. Every few months, small gifts would appear. Pine cones arranged in patterns. Interesting rocks. Once, a salmon, still fresh from the stream. The bears never showed themselves again, but their presence was felt. Connor changed after that day. The boy, who had trapped a cub for fun, became a young man who volunteered at the wildlife reserves. He went to college to study veterinary medicine, driven by the memory of steady hands removing a bullet while a brave baby sang to bears. Years passed, but the story was far from over. Mila grew into a curious 3-year-old with wild copper hair and her mother's stubborn streak. She remembered the bears the way children remember dreams, in fragments of warmth and fur and safety. Mr. Rodriguez had made her a picture book, filling it with photos he'd secretly taken that day. She carried it everywhere. One February morning, heavy snow blanketed the junkyard. Jessica had taken a rare day off from the diner and was making pancakes when Mila pressed her face against the kitchen window. "Mama, someone's crying." Jessica listened but heard only wind. "It's just the storm, sweetheart." But Mila was already pulling on her boots. She had inherited something from that day with the bears, an instinct for creatures in distress. Before Jessica could stop her, the child had unlatched the door and stepped into the blizzard. "Mila, get back here." The snow was thick, reducing visibility to mere feet. Jessica grabbed her coat and followed, panic rising in her throat. The junkyard was dangerous enough in clear weather. In a whiteout, it was a death trap. Mila moved with surprising purpose for a 3-year-old. She navigated between snow-covered car husks as if following a map only she could see. The crying grew louder, not wind, but something alive. Something scared. They found it near the old freezer, now buried under 2 feet of snow. A dog, barely more than a puppy, caught in a rusty leg trap. Its brown fur was matted with ice. Blood stained the snow around its trapped paw. "Poor puppy," Mila said, immediately kneeling beside it. The dog snarled weakly, fear overriding pain. It had been there all night, temperature dropping, hope fading. Now these humans approached, and it only knew humans as sources of pain. The trap was evidence of that. "Don't touch it, Mila. It might bite." Jessica looked around helplessly. The trap was old, its mechanism frozen. They needed tools, help. But Mila was already working. She spoke to the dog in the same nonsense language she'd once used with the bear cub. Her small hands weren't strong enough to open the trap, but they could offer comfort. The dog's snarls faded to whimpers. "We need Mr. Rodriguez," Jessica decided. But the old man had moved to a nursing home last month. His arthritis had finally won. The new junkyard manager was a stranger who lived off-site. Then Mila did something that stopped Jessica's heart. She lay down in the snow beside the trapped dog, curling her small body around it for warmth, just as the mother bear had once done for her. "Mila, you'll freeze." "Puppy cold, too," was the stubborn response. Jessica knelt beside them, her mind racing. The nearest vet was 20 miles away. The roads were impassable. Her phone had no signal. They were alone. That's when she saw them, eyes glowing in the snow. Multiple pairs. Jessica's blood ran cold. Wolves. The storm must have driven them down from the mountains. The smell of blood had attracted them. She grabbed a metal pipe, pushing Mila behind her. The wolves circled closer, their shapes barely visible in the swirling snow. The trapped dog whined pitifully. It knew predators when it smelled them. "Stay back." Jessica swung the pipe wildly. The wolves paused but didn't retreat. They were hungry. Winter had been hard. The wounded dog was easy prey. The humans were just obstacles. Then the snow shifted. Something massive moved between the wolves and the humans. Jessica blinked, certain she was hallucinating. But the shape solidified. A grizzly bear, scarred shoulder, marking her as familiar. Behind her, a younger bear, no longer a cub, but not yet fully grown. The mother bear rose on her hind legs, roaring into the storm. The sound shook snow from nearby wreckage. The wolves scattered, recognizing a superior predator. Within seconds, they vanished into the white. "Bear friend!" Mila exclaimed, delighted despite the circumstances. The bears approached slowly. The mother sniffed at the trapped dog, understanding the situation instantly. She'd seen such traps before, lost hunters, cruel humans. She looked at Jessica with those intelligent eyes, then at the trap. What happened next defied every nature documentary Jessica had ever watched. The mother bear gripped the trap's jaws with her teeth, while her offspring used its paws to push the release mechanism. They worked together with practiced ease, as if they'd done this before. The trap sprang open. The dog yelped as circulation returned to its paw. It tried to stand but collapsed. The injury was severe. Without immediate care, infection would set in. The same infection that had nearly killed the mother bear. Mila crawled forward, ignoring her mother's protests. She examined the wound with the seriousness of a doctor. "Needs bandage," she announced, "like Mama Bear before." The younger bear, the one Mila had saved years ago, did something unexpected. It turned and walked into the storm. The mother bear stayed, her bulk shielding the humans and dog from the worst of the wind. 20 minutes passed. Jessica's teeth chattered from cold. Mila had wrapped herself around the injured dog, sharing body heat. Then the young bear returned, dragging something, a backpack, torn and weathered, probably dropped by some hiker, but inside medical supplies, bandages, antiseptic, even a small bottle of antibiotics. The bear had remembered. Humans fixed wounds with these things. Jessica's hands shook as she worked. The dog was surprisingly calm now, as if it understood these creatures were trying to help. She cleaned the wound, applied antiseptic, wrapped it carefully. The antibiotics would have to be crushed and mixed with food later. "Good job, Mama," Mila praised, just as she'd once praised the bears. The storm was worsening. They needed shelter. The trailer was too far in this visibility, But the mother bear was already moving. She nudged them toward a nearby shipping container, partially open and dry inside. Old newspapers and cardboard created makeshift insulation. They huddled together, woman, child, dog, and 2 bears. Body heat filled the small space. The dog lay between Mila and the younger bear, no longer afraid. It seemed to recognize fellow survivors. "Why did you come?" Jessica whispered to the bears, though she knew they couldn't answer. But maybe they did answer, in their way. The mother bear's scarred shoulder pressed against Jessica's back. The message was clear. "We remember. We protect. We're family now." The storm raged for hours. Mila fell asleep, one hand on the dog, the other on the bear's fur. Jessica fought to stay awake, still amazed by their situation. When had her life become a fairy tale? Connor found them the next morning. He'd heard about the storm on the news and driven through the night to check on them. His veterinary training kicked in when he saw the dog. "Legs broken," he diagnosed. "But clean, no infection yet. How did you—" He trailed off, noticing their companions. The bears watched him calmly. Recognition flickered in the mother's eyes. The boy who'd trapped her cub, who'd saved her life, who'd changed. "Hello, old friend," Connor said softly. "Thank you for protecting them." The bears helped them carry the dog to Connor's truck. He had a proper veterinary kit now. The dog would need surgery, but it would survive. As they prepared to leave, the younger bear approached Mila. It dropped something at her feet. A small wooden carving, crude but recognizable. A bear and a human child standing together. Where had it found such a thing? Who had made it? Mila hugged the carving to her chest. "Thank you." The bears watched until the truck disappeared. Then they melted back into the forest, leaving only tracks in the snow. But their presence lingered. Their protection continued. The dog recovered fully. Jessica named him Guardian for obvious reasons. He became Mila's constant companion, following her everywhere with the devotion of one who knows what it means to be saved. But the story took another turn that spring. Construction crews arrived at the junkyard. Development was coming. The land had been sold. Soon, concrete would cover the place where bears and humans had forged an impossible bond. "They'll destroy everything," Jessica said, watching bulldozers tear through familiar landmarks. The old freezer was among the first things to go. Mila stood at the window, clutching her bear carving. She was 4 now, old enough to understand loss. Where will the bears visit? That night, Jessica made a decision. She'd saved enough money. It was time. She bought a small cabin on the forest edge, just 10 miles from the old ranger station where the bears had recovered. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. Moving day came with unexpected guests. The bears appeared one last time at the junkyard. They watched the humans pack their belongings. The mother bear approached Jessica and did something extraordinary. She pressed a paw print into the mud, then nudged Jessica's hand toward it. "You want me to—" Jessica placed her palm in the print. It dwarfed her hand completely. The bear nodded, that same deliberate nod from years ago, a promise, a pact, "We'll find you." They moved to the cabin in May. Mila started school in the fall, regaling classmates with impossible stories of bear friends. Nobody believed her until the morning guardian started barking at the window. There, at the forest edge, 2 shapes waited, watching, protecting. The younger bear had cubs of its own now, tiny forms tumbling in the grass. The grandmother bear's muzzle had grayed, but her eyes remained sharp. "Can we go see them?" Mila begged. Jessica hesitated, then nodded, carefully. They walked to the tree line. The bears didn't retreat. Instead, the cubs tumbled forward, curious about these strange, two-legged creatures. One particularly brave cub sniffed Mila's hand. "This is my granddaughter," the grandmother bear seemed to say with her steady gaze. "She needs to know about humans, about kindness, about the day a baby saved a baby." Mila sat in the grass, laughing as the cubs climbed over her. Guardian watched protectively, occasionally licking a cub that ventured too close. The adult bears settled nearby, content. This became their new routine. Weekly visits at the forest edge, never too close, always respectful. The cubs grew up knowing Mila's scent, remembering the strange family that transcended species. Connor opened his veterinary practice in town. He specialized in wildlife rehabilitation, inspired by that desperate surgery in a junkyard. Often, injured animals would appear at his doorstep with no explanation. He'd treat them, then watch them disappear into the forest. He never charged for these mysterious patients. One autumn day, a ranger brought in a bear cub with the infected wound. Connor recognized the markings immediately, one of the grandmother bear's great-grandcubs. The infection was serious but treatable. "Where did you find it?" he asked. "Strangest thing," the ranger said. "It was sitting outside your clinic door this morning, like it knew to come here." Connor smiled. He cleaned the wound, administered antibiotics, kept the cub overnight. The next morning, it was gone, but a pile of fresh salmon lay on his doorstep. Payment in full. Years flowed like the stream behind Mila's cabin. She grew tall and strong, with her mother's determination and something else, a gift for understanding creatures without words. She studied biology, specialized in interspecies communication. Her thesis advisors called her theories impossible, until they saw her work. The day she graduated, something special waited at the cabin. Not the bears this time, but something they'd left, a path of pine cones leading into the forest. Jessica and Mila followed it, Guardian limping along on his old legs. The path led to a clearing. In the center grew an ancient oak tree. Carved into its bark was a story. Rough pictures showing a baby, a trapped cub, a freezer, showing friendship across species, showing family beyond blood. At the base of the tree lay bones, old bones. The grandmother bear had passed here, in this sacred space, but around the tree her descendants gathered. 3 generations of bears who knew humans as friends, not threats. Mila knelt by the bones, tears streaming. She'd known this day would come. The bear had been old, tired, but the legacy lived on in every cub that played unafraid when humans appeared. In every injured animal that sought help instead of hiding. In every moment of trust between species. "Thank you," she whispered to the bones, "for everything." The bears watched solemnly. Then the oldest, the one Mila had saved as a cub, approached. It touched her shoulder with massive gentleness. The message was clear. The torch had passed. The story continued. Mila established a research center near the cabin. Scientists came from around the world to study the unusual bear population that showed no fear of humans, that displayed problem-solving abilities beyond normal ursine intelligence, that seemed to understand human language. She never told them the full truth. How could she explain that it started with a baby's stubborn courage, with teenagers choosing redemption, with a mother's love transcending species? Some stories were too precious for scientific journals, but late at night when the moon was full, she would sit by her window and write. Children's books about brave babies and gentle giants, about the day love conquered fear in a forgotten junkyard, about the magic that happens when we see beyond our differences. And sometimes, when she looked up from her writing, eyes would gleam in the darkness. watching, protecting, remembering. The bears of her childhood, now elders themselves, ensuring their cubs knew the story too. The junkyard was long gone, buried under a shopping mall, but in a forest clearing, a carved tree grew taller each year, and in the hearts of those who knew the truth, a different kind of monument stood. To the day a baby chose kindness over fear, to the moment when human and beast became family. Guardian passed on his 15th birthday, surrounded by those he'd protected. Mila buried him beneath the story tree, knowing the bears would watch over him as he'd watched over her. Within days, a young wolf pup appeared at her door, injured and afraid. The cycle began anew, but the true ending came 25 years after that first day in the junkyard. Mila, now 26 and pregnant with her first child, received an urgent call from Connor. His voice trembled with disbelief. "You need to come to the clinic, now, and bring your mother." Jessica, silver-streaked but still strong, drove them through a spring storm. Lightning illuminated the forest in stark flashes. Thunder rolled across the mountains like nature's drumbeat. At the clinic, Connor waited with 3 rangers and a wildlife photographer whose camera shook in his hands. "What's wrong?" Mila asked, one hand protective over her swollen belly. Connor led them to the examination room. On the metal table lay a bear cub, but this was no ordinary cub. Its fur was lighter than normal, marked with an unusual white pattern across its chest, a pattern that looked almost like a heart. "Where did you find it?" Jessica whispered. "That's just it," the photographer stammered. "I didn't find it. It found me. I was documenting the storm damage when this adult bear approached. She was carrying this cub, and she placed it at my feet, then she pointed. Actually pointed with her paw. Toward town, toward here." Mila examined the cub carefully. It was healthy but weak, as if it had traveled a long distance. Around its neck was something impossible. A collar made of woven grass, and hanging from it, her old bear carving, the one the young bear had given her in the snow all those years ago. "This can't be," she breathed. Connor nodded grimly. "There's more. The mother bear, she was old, ancient really. She had a white muzzle, and moved like every step hurt. After she gave me the cub, she walked back into the forest. I followed, worried she was sick. I found her a mile away." He paused, struggling with the words. "She was gone, passed peacefully under a pine tree. But Mila, she had that same heart pattern, exactly the same. I've never seen markings like that on any bear except this cub." The room fell silent, except for the rain hammering the windows. The cub stirred, opening eyes that were the wrong color for a bear. They were blue, pale blue, like a certain toddler who once saved a trapped cub. "It's not possible," Jessica said, but her voice held wonder, not denial. "That bear I saved. She couldn't still be alive. And bears can't, they don't. Pass on markings deliberately," Mila finished. "Choose specific cubs to carry forward a legacy. We used to think bears couldn't do a lot of things." She lifted the cub gently. It nuzzled into her neck, making a sound she remembered from childhood. Not quite a bear sound. Something more, something that spoke of memory passed down through generations, of promises kept beyond death. "The mother bear knew," Mila said softly. "Somehow she knew I was pregnant, knew it was time to pass on, whatever this is, this connection, this responsibility." The photographer cleared his throat. "There's something else. Before she left the cub, the mother bear did something. She drew in the mud with her claw. I took a picture." He showed them his camera screen. In the mud was a rough but clear drawing. A human baby and a bear cub. A circle around them both. And below, a series of smaller circles, spreading out like ripples on water. "She's telling us the story continues," Connor interpreted, "from one generation to the next, forever." Mila felt her baby kick, strong and insistent. At the same moment, the bear cub lifted its head and placed a tiny paw on her belly. The kick came again, exactly where the paw rested, baby and cub, connecting before birth. "What will you do?" Connor asked. But Mila already knew. Had known from the moment she saw the white heart marking. "What I was taught to do, what we've always done. Love beyond logic. Family beyond species." They brought the cub home that night. Jessica prepared a bed for it, the same blankets that had once wrapped baby Mila. The wolf pup, now grown, sniffed the newcomer cautiously, then lay beside it protectively. The cycle not just continuing but expanding. As Mila tucked the cub in, she noticed movement at the forest edge. Not eyes this time, but shapes. Dozens of them. Bears of all ages sitting in silent vigil, watching over their human family as they welcomed the newest bridge between worlds. Later, unable to sleep, Mila found her mother on the porch. Jessica held an old photo, the only one from that day in the junkyard. Baby Mila, tiny hands wrapped around a bear cub, both looking at the camera with identical expressions of trust. "Do you ever wonder," Jessica asked, "if we changed them or they changed us?" Mila considered this, feeling her baby move again. Maybe that's not the question. Maybe the question is, what did we become together? Thunder rumbled in the distance, but the storm was passing. In its wake came a strange calm, the kind that follows transformation, the kind that promises new beginnings. "When your baby is born," Jessica said, "what will you tell them about all this?" Mila smiled, her hand finding the bear carving she still wore on a chain. "The truth, that once upon a time a baby saved a cub, and in doing so saved us all, taught us that love doesn't see species, that family isn't about blood, that the smallest act of kindness can echo across generations." Inside, the bear cub whimpered in its sleep. Without hesitation, Mila went to it. She sang the same nonsense song she'd sung in the junkyard. The cub settled, one paw reaching out to grasp her finger, holding on with the same trusting grip its ancestor had used 25 years ago. 3 months later, Mila gave birth to a daughter. She named her Hope. The first thing the baby saw upon opening her eyes was the bear cub, standing guard beside her crib. The first sound she heard was its gentle rumble of protection. As Hope grew, she displayed an uncanny ability. She understood animals before she understood human words. She could calm any frightened creature with a touch. She drew bears and babies before she could write her name. The research center Mila ran became world-renowned. Not for its scientific breakthroughs, though there were many, but for the simple truth it demonstrated daily that the barrier between human and animal was a construct, that consciousness, compassion, and love existed in many forms. Students came to learn, skeptics came to scoff, but all left changed. Because it was impossible to watch a human child and bear cub play together, to see the trust in their interactions, and not question everything you thought you knew about the natural world. Connor's veterinary practice evolved into a teaching hospital. He trained a new generation of vets who understood that healing was about more than medicine. It was about recognizing the connection between all living things. But the most profound change was in the forest itself. The bears there were different. Smarter, more communicative. They taught their cubs not to fear humans but to evaluate them individually. They developed a complex social structure that included their human neighbors. Other animals noticed. Wolves began bringing injured pack members to Connor's clinic. Birds would guide lost hikers back to trails. The forest became a living example of what was possible when fear gave way to understanding. Years turned to decades. Hope grew up and had children of her own. Each generation seemed to strengthen the bond. Each new child born with an intuitive understanding of the natural world that science couldn't explain but couldn't deny either. The white-hearted bear lived longer than any bear on record. It saw Hope's children born, watched them take their first steps, was there when they spoke their first words, often to the animals before their parents. When it finally passed, peacefully in its sleep at age 35, the entire forest mourned. But by then, the pattern was clear. Every few years, another special cub would appear, always with unique markings, always with that same knowing look, always finding its way to the human family that had started it all. The junkyard was long forgotten, buried under progress. But the story lived on. In scientific journals that documented impossible animal behavior, in children's books that taught empathy across species, in the hearts of everyone who'd witnessed the magic. Mila, old now, her hair white as snow, sat on her porch one evening. Hope's grandchildren played in the yard, tumbling with the latest generation of bears. The scene could have been from another planet, so surreal was the harmony. Was it worth it? A young journalist asked. He'd come to document the phenomenon, to try to capture in words what defied explanation. All the skeptics? All the danger? All the responsibility? Mila didn't answer immediately. She watched a toddler share her sandwich with a bear cub, watched them curl up together for an afternoon nap, perfect trust between predator and prey, watched the adult bears and humans sit together, guardians of something precious. Then she smiled, her weathered hand finding the ancient bear carving she still wore. "Ask me what it cost," she said. "Ask me what we sacrificed. The answer would be nothing, because what we gained, what we became, that's beyond price." The journalist wrote many articles about the bear-human family, won awards, became famous, but he never quite captured the truth. How could he? How could anyone who hadn't been there from the beginning? The truth was simpler and more profound than any article could convey. It lived in the moment when a baby chose love over fear, in the second when a dying bear chose forgiveness over revenge, in the decision to see family where others saw only danger. As the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of hope, Mila closed her eyes. She could hear them all, past and present, the bears who'd passed and those yet to come, the children who'd grown and those still to be born, all connected by invisible threads of love that transcended death itself. In the forest, a young bear with distinctive markings watched the house. Its pale blue eyes held intelligence beyond its species. On its chest, a white pattern that looked like two hearts merged into one. It would find its way to the door tomorrow, carrying a pine cone gift, the newest chapter in a never-ending story. Because that's what love does. It refuses to end. It passes from heart to heart, generation to generation, species to species. It transforms junkyards into sanctuaries and strangers into family. It turns a moment of childhood courage into an eternal legacy. And somewhere, in whatever place spirits dwell, a grandmother bear and a brave baby girl watched over it all. Their story complete but never finished, their love echoing forward into forever, proving that some bonds are too strong for death to break. The bears would always return. The children would always understand. The connection would always endure. This was the promise written in starlight, sealed in trust, and lived in every shared heartbeat between human and wild. The end was just another beginning, always.